Call the meeting. Thank you, Adrian. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and let's get started. I think I'm going to go slightly out of order and have Adrian, can you give your update first?
Sure. Not much to report. I am supporting Chair Dennis and then Holly we will be starting interviews for the people who applied to be, here's Colin, members of the commission. So we'll be starting that this week. So we're excited about that. And then just for my information purposes, I will be attending in person tomorrow. The city of Boston is hosting a public disability forum at Suffolk Law School. And I thought I would just go to see what they're up to and sort of what they're talking about. And it might give way for maybe Somerville to do something similar in the future, which I think might be helpful. So I'm just going to go to listen and for informational purposes. So yes, Harriet.
Is it a hybrid? Is it a hybrid and open?
No, Harriet, I asked them that question and I've not gotten an answer. And all I'm seeing is in person, which is feels problematic to me in our current climate. So I will be raising that question when I get there.
Okay, well, you can always text me, and if I can jump in, I will.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting, considering our current climate and accessibility. Anyways, that's all I have. So I will pass it back to Chair Dennis.
Thank you. This is Bonnie. Yes, I also found that interesting. I would have considered attending if it was hybrid or virtual. Tomorrow is also the anniversary of my mom's death, so I might not have done the whole thing, but seeing that it was in person, I thought, nope, that's just not where I'm at right now with hundreds of people. So I look forward to hearing back on how that goes and seeing what you can share with us next month. Sure. I have been a bit under the weather, so I apologize. I'm scattered and I don't really have much of an update. As Adrian said, we are going to be doing potential commissioner interviews. We have a bunch scheduled for Thursday. And I think that's the biggest thing. I see Katie had a question in the chat. How many is a bunch? We have 5 scheduled and are waiting to hear from one other person. And there was one person who had to rescind their application because they're going to be leaving Somerville, unfortunately. That said, there is one person who appears to be a family member of a person with a disability. So we have one opening for that and then 3 other openings. So there's a little bit of a split in terms of who's being interviewed for what, because we can only fill that one spot with somebody who is a family member. So, yep. If people are able to raise a hand to do questions instead of putting them in the chat, that would make it a little bit easier. I see it's just a comment from Katie saying, great. Yeah, we're excited for that. I guess I had one question, which is, Adrian, have we heard anything more about the procurement training?
No, they have assured me that they will let me know when the next one is. As you are probably aware, they try to line these up with hiring and as sort of a big group, whatever that looks like for them, of new employees. There is a lot of hiring going on right now, which I'm sure you're all aware of. So hopefully soon, I would expect they would try to do it before like summer vacation kind of messes with people's schedules, but I will ask again. I'll keep nudging.
Okay. So. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, so moving on, we had a variance request. Adrian forwarded me this afternoon. Apparently the MAAB had a hearing yesterday, and I apologize for I was a little unclear on timelines. I had thought that there was a 30-day response period, and it turns out it's only a 14-day response period. And usually they don't schedule hearings that quickly, but this time they happened to, and they approved the request to do the deeper sinks on the type 1 units, which are the adaptable units, with the condition that it is communicated clearly to tenants at leasing that they are able to get that switched to a shallower sink should they need to. There's a 30-day limit for that being done. They're requiring training of the leasing agents as well. There's no cost to the tenants. And they denied the request for the group 2 units, which are the units that are required to be fully accessible upon move-in. So I think there's been, I'm interested in reaching out to some other disability commissions, which I can do in the next few weeks, about how they receive variance requests, because I think timeline wise, we've definitely gotten some other variances late, and this one, you know, they sent it to Adrian 6 days after the application was submitted, and that's roughly half the waiting period, which doesn't really give us time to respond. This particular one, my opinion is it wasn't as complex as some others, and so I'm not totally worried that they made a decision without us, but I don't think it's a good precedent to set to not have time to sort of weigh in. Yes, Adrian.
Adrian, thanks, Chair Dennis. I did speak with Rachel at Cambridge about how they do this process. It's a little different because Rachel herself identifies as a person with a disability. So that commission actually puts a lot of trust in her for the majority of variance requests to, you know, write a recommendation or respond to them. And so that sort of cuts down on their time. She did disclose to me that if it is a more complicated request, maybe with different layers or it's a bigger building, that she does take that to commission. But she said it's very hard because rarely it lines up, you know, with their schedule of meetings, which is something, of course, I know this body has experienced. So yeah, I was a little, and even I looked at the application and I didn't even see where they indicated like specifically, I know it has to go to this commission because that's what they have to do, but I didn't see that they actually filled that out appropriately. So that was a little concerning to me.
This is Bonnie. Thank you, Adrian. Yeah, that's been a problem in the past as well. And I don't know if the issue is that MAAB got used to not having a response from Somerville, because with the difficulty of maintaining a consistent ADA coordinator and the commission not having quorum for such a long time, I think that there were many years that there wasn't going to be a response. And I don't know if it's maybe they need some expectation resetting, but if it's a problem for the Cambridge Commission as well, you know, maybe it's a bigger conversation of MAAB states very clearly on their website, they do not review incomplete applications. And if a candidate does not, or an applicant does not add that in there and put in and show that they've contacted people, maybe that needs to be considered incomplete. So I think there's definitely follow-up to be done here, because I'd like the commission to be able to actually weigh in on things in the future, especially since we know that there's going to be a lot more construction in Somerville and it's going to be a bigger and bigger deal. Holly and then Jamie.
Sorry, I'll be brief. This letter is dated August 27th of 2021, and I'm not sure the time frame of how these happened either, but I'm looking at this and it talks about how the sink is, it's appalling how this was written. I find it offensive. I think that there are only 5 type 2 units in a building with 59 units. the 89 group, 1 unit. I just, to try to insist that they could swap it out. And I, if I had known earlier, I might have also sent in just a letter as myself, because giving them a variance for how many of the type 1 units, when you think of the proportion of accessible units that they have to provide being so low, I just, that's why this is there. They're stating it's impractical and will result in excessive cost without substantial benefit. That's all I'm going to say. Thanks.
Jamie?
I just wanted to take a step back and ask while we're here, because I'm not the only one that's newer to the commission. What is the process? There was some sort of talk around it with the access board and stuff, but can you contextualize what we're doing here, or would have been doing if not for the timeline weirdness? Thanks, Bonnie.
This is Bonnie. Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, so the MAAB is a state agency that oversees the variance requests. They have their own rules that are a bit more stringent than fair housing rules that people tend to think of when they think about accessibility in the built environment. So if somebody wants to not meet the letter of the law, they need to apply for a variance, and they need to prove that there would be a hardship to meeting the requirements, whether it's physically impossible, or it would be cost prohibitive or not provide a substantial benefit. And that is, of course, subjective, right? So what happens is they're required to notify the local independent living center, which for a large portion of the state, including where we are, is the Boston Center for Independent Living. And then there are other independent living centers across the state. So they're always somebody who's supposed to be notified. And then they're also supposed to notify the Commission for Persons with Disabilities and or the ADA coordinator of whatever municipality they're applying for the variance in. And we get a time period to respond. I had thought it was 30 days, so I did not act as quickly on this. I honestly don't know that we would have been able to schedule a special meeting for it, but I apologize for that. I had thought it was 30 days and it's 14. So the process is there's that 14-day period where the Independent Living Center and the commission can respond and say, I support this, or I don't support this, and here's why. And then the MAAB, the Mass Architectural Access Board, takes that into consideration. They set up their own hearings. They do hearings every 2 weeks, and they go through everyone who's applied, and they either make a determination or they schedule a larger hearing where members of the public theoretically can comment. I am told that's incredibly difficult because of how they run the meetings virtually. I think it used to be a little different when it was in person, but if they have received comments from commissions, they will include those and read them. And then if they've done that larger hearing, then they would make a decision after that or continue it if they still need more information. Does that?
This is Jamie. Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. So
This is Katie. I have one question.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm also it doesn't matter what I'm doing. So the 2 weeks is by that is written by MAB. That's okay. So that has already been determined that is not. I'm stuttering. That is not the okay.
This is Bonnie.
Non-negotiable was the word I meant. It's not a negotiable amount of time or a changeable amount of time.
This is Bonnie. Well, I'm not sure. I think that's a question of talking to more commissions and finding out how many other people are having this problem, and do we want to band together and talk to MAAB about changing that timeline if it's really not working. I have some other comments, but I see Colin with a raised hand, so.
Yeah, just because I've dealt with these systems a little bit. The question, the thing I don't know is that 2-week period set in statute or in MAAB's own policies? If it's in MAAB's own policies, then yeah, I think we should that trying to push them for a longer time period would be a really good idea. I think, you know, and we'd have a good case for it. And I can see, like, I mean, Jeff Dugan, I think, would be receptive. They're or sorry, no, Jeff is an MOD. I think MAAB would be receptive in general to it if it's a policy change they could make. If it's something that exists in the statute, then their hands may be tied. So that's the thing we'd have to find out. But there's certainly no harm in raising it with them. And even if it is in the statute, if we could get their support for a change, that would be the first step.
This is Bonnie. Thank you, Colin. I think that's a good point. Do you have the capacity to reach out, since I know you have relationships with people at MAAB?
Yes, I can. My relationships largely have turned over, but I can reach out in my DPC capacity and ask.
And I know Adrian put in the comments to bring it up at the next CODA meeting, which is it's a group of commission members that meet monthly to discuss issues going on. And that is definitely one of the places I was referencing when I said I can try and bring this up over the next few weeks. Unfortunately, there was a CODA meeting just a couple days ago, or maybe it's, I feel like it was a couple days ago, but it's usually on Wednesdays, so maybe it's tomorrow. But either way, I have either missed it or will be missing it, but I can reach out to the coordinator of that group and make sure it is on the question list for next month. I see Jamie.
It's Jamie. Yeah, so I guess it occurs to me I'm not actually fully clear on what the 2 weeks is. Like 2 weeks from what point to what point in the process?
This is Bonnie. Thank you. That was one of the comments because Holly raised something about that as well. Yeah, so it's hard to tell sometimes because often we receive materials and we receive them after they've submitted everything. And some folks might have noted, I definitely noted in the review that there was a letter dated August 27th. And I don't know if that letter was actually submitted August 27th or if it was written by the architect August 27th of 2021 and they got distracted and had other projects that were a priority. And so they didn't actually submit it until they submitted the application on April 13th. So I don't know. And I think that's another question for MAAB because obviously if they're receiving materials, you know, 6 or 8 months ahead of time, I think that that's a good time to inform a commission of, hey, we haven't received the full request, but this might be coming down the pipeline, and share that info. Now, there might be a legal reason that they can't do that. I don't know. But I am curious as well, because I think the 2 weeks is when the application is submitted, but we have also previously seen applications that were dated months prior. And again, don't know if it was that they waited or that they signed it on that date and then waited to submit it. Like, it's really hard to tell because there just hasn't been a lot of communication. So good question. In terms of this particular request, I don't want to get into too heavy of a discussion of it because I think we do have a lot to tackle for the rest of the meeting where we can make change and affect progress. And this we can't, it's done. But as a wheelchair user who up until very recently was in one of these group 2 units, I can tell you that I read this request and I would have leaned towards approving it because I think that the standards are really important and it's important to have the space to meet them. And there are people who definitely need the space, but there are also a lot of us who don't. Like I myself, with a deeper sink, have plenty of room to roll underneath it if there's not a cabinet in the way. And I personally hated doing dishes in a sink that I couldn't fit even a small pot into. So for me, I would have loved to show up and have a sink that I could use and actually have it feel functional. Kitchens routinely don't have usable cabinet space because the requirements don't have it. Like they don't require it. They require them to be a certain height from the countertop, but that doesn't actually mean upper cabinets are usable. Almost nobody builds in space to have lower cabinets. And so as a wheelchair user who's an active cooker, I had a very non-functional kitchen and I hated it. So the idea that it would be there, but it would be changeable for people who needed the shallower sink, and it was pretty clear of like they would keep them on stock, they would have people trained in how to do it, they would set a timeline for doing it quickly. To me, that feels reasonable. And I understand other people might feel differently. Henry, I see your hand. I just want to finish the thought and then I'm going to come to you. So this, I think, highlights where I think it is really important, especially as this commission gets more people with diverse disabilities, for the commission to, as much as possible, be involved in writing the commentary on this and not just leaving it to the ADA coordinator. If we can't figure out with MAAB how to make it a timeline that works to do that, then yeah, we should consider allocating it that way so that we're not just missing the boat entirely. But I think lived experience is really important here. Henry?
I thank the chair. Quick note, I'm looking at 521 CMR, which is their Architectural Access Board variance procedure, and I see 4.1.1. Upon receipt of an application for variance, the board shall send a copy of the application to local building inspector, local disability commission, and independent living center for their input. I don't see anything about a timeline there, so I suspect that those are rules developed by MAAB, but I can look into it further. Thank you.
This is Bonnie. Thank you, Henry. That's really helpful. And yeah, if you want to look into it further, that would be great. And did I see Harriet's hand raised?
That's okay. I just wanted to say I agree with you thoroughly that having a more direct opportunity to review variance. And I'll tell you, this commission is meaningful enough to me that I would meet more than once a month. I mean, I'm sure that variants, as you pointed out, are going to come up more and more frequently. And the whole point is that most developers and renovators, whatever you want to say, everybody is looking to make life easier for themselves and not for those who may need these dwellings for the most part. My question would be, if I want to put a temporary ramp on my house, am I going to have to go to hell and high water to get the Somerville folks to agree to it? But that's another matter. But in terms of wider development kinds of things, I think that's critical. Thank you.
Thank you. Leon?
Yeah, this is Leon. This might be a good use for subcommittees. So we could have a smaller group that would be able to review things and send in a response quicker if the period doesn't overlap with a full meeting. And that would possibly be a way to sort of have that timeliness without it being just one person, but still not requiring like an actual full meeting every week or whatever.
Yeah.
This is Bonnie. I agree. I see Colin with a thumbs up as well. The one thing I think we need somebody to research more is if we can empower the subcommittee to submit those without them coming to the full commission before being signed off on. Like I know city council has their different committees and they go into those committees and then have to come back to the full council. So I don't know if it's different for a commission. I see Katie and then Brian.
Hi, this is Katie. My question about subcommittees is well, it's about the commissioners. There's to be 8 commissioners. That's the maximum amount of commissioners.
9.
That's the maximum.
Currently, that is the maximum. There's
And
a state
sorry.
minimum is 5. State maximum is 13. Our bylaws state 9 is our maximum.
Okay. So I was wondering, can non-commissioners be on subcommittees? If someone wasn't a commissioner, could they be on a subcommittee? Oh, we prefer not.
This is Bonnie. Associate commissioners and non-commissioners do not have the power to vote. So I don't believe they would be able to be on subcommittees because it would be official business of the commission that, but again, that's a rule that I think we would need to double check. Brian?
This is Brian. If my memory serves me, and I agree, we should check with the clerk's office and possibly legal. Non-commissioners, whether associate or guests, can be part of subcommittees, but there needs to be commission members that are the decision makers that bring the decision back to the commission as a whole. And the subcommittee cannot make a formal decision without it going through the commission as a whole. That said, a potential reasonable workaround would be as if we allowed the coordinator to respond to variances without a formal response from the commission. The subcommittees could inform the coordinator of the committee's or commission's perspective and take that into account on their own perspective. So that might be a reasonable way to do it. It does put a lot of trust in our coordinator, but then I do regularly.
This is Bonnie. Thank you, Brian. That's really helpful. I think it also puts a lot of trust in the subcommittee members. And, you know, I think the goal that we all have is for every commission member to be more active than perhaps we have been, and for people to be really thoughtful and to add more people so there's more capacity. So I think, you know, we would want to be trusting people anyhow, and we would of course vote as a whole commission when forming subcommittees. So yeah, I like it. We've gone so far afield. So what I'm gonna say is, I think that that's a really good thing to do. Now I do remember what I was gonna say in my update, which is my plan for next month's agenda, minutes, because there was not time to amend tonight's agenda, but I believe everybody should have received the current batch of minutes to review. And so that's going to be on next month's agenda. But the other thing I wanted to devote time to was discussing officer positions. And hopefully by next month, we will have 4 new confirmed commissioners. Our goal is to try and get through these interviews and make recommendations on a timeline that they can then get sent to city council, and then to confirmation of appointments, and then another full city council meeting in time to be able to be confirmed for next month. It's tight, but we're hoping to do that. And then we can have the discussion of officer positions, and I can add to that subcommittee discussions. Because I think that we should devote a little more time to how we want to set this up but it's a really good thing to start moving on because yeah, it sounds like it would work really well to try and be more timely. So great. Next order of business, discussing the things we brought up last time as potential uses of parking fund violations. What I would like to do this evening is try and discuss the various things and come to an agreement as to whether or not we want to include them on the document submitted to City Council for how we want to spend our funds. Remember that this is, it just has to be broad at this point, but it seemed like folks had a lot of ideas and we might be able to make it a little less broad than just 4 or 5 catch-all categories. But we have the option of just doing that, saying, you know, we want to spend on advertising, we want to spend on programming, but we probably want at least a couple of examples, if nothing else. So do people want me to share that document, or do you, I see at least one head nod, so I will do that. First, I see Colin with a hand raised. And then Henry.
Yeah, sorry, I was finding my unmute button. Yeah, I think the ideal for that would be 4 to 5 broad categories with, like, say, 3 examples under each, right? That means we're not constrained to those examples if we come up with other things, but it gives the commission, the council, a better idea of what each category means.
Thank you. Henry?
This is Jamie. Henry, we can't hear you.
Sorry, thank you. This is Henry. I thank the chair. I agree with the previous comments, and I would suggest that in addition that we just have a catch-all or any other legal purpose, so that we don't get into the minutia of, you know, is this in this category or that category? So I think a general document would serve our purpose as well.
Great, thank you. All right, I am gonna try and share. Great, so I have that up on the screen. So we're gonna start at the top. Or actually, I guess I'll start at the broad overview. Currently for categories, I have access, grant making, internal, programming/events, publicity, and training. Off the bat, is there anything people think we're missing? And I'm just going to say, I can't see everybody at this point. So if you can't use the raised hand function, feel free to unmute and say that you'd like to speak. All right.
This is Jamie. It looks like the document that I downloaded when you sent the agenda has some differences from the one that you have up on the screen, because this one is 1 page and that one, the last line wrapped onto another page.
This is Bonnie. It shouldn't have any substantive changes. I think it's a function of Google Docs being weird. All I've done is make a copy, and I did that so that I could edit it without changing the content that was posted before.
This is Leon. I'm seeing some places where line breaks are missing on the Google Docs one that's being shared. So I think that's the why it's not going onto another page now.
Okay.
This is doing me again. It is going on to another page now. So presumably it will be going even more, but I think GDocs being weird is a pretty reasonable explanation. We don't need to get into like, oh, what are the margins on the page and stuff. We can move on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I promise I didn't change anything. Literally just before I shared screen. I just made a copy so that we can edit it and still retain the original document. I'm happy to go back and do it different if this concerns people. But I have not added or taken anything out. Holly?
Thank you, Chair Dennis. There are some things that are detailed here that I think would not be our responsibility to fill. I feel strongly they would be the city's responsibility, but I understand why we feel strongly that they should be filled. But I agree with what was said earlier, that we keep things as examples of, instead of saying this is the only list. And I'd say that 75% of this is fantastic and spot on. And not to say that the other isn't, it's just I like the majority of what's written here.
This is Bonnie. Thank you, Holly. No, so I don't think we do all agree. This is everything that was suggested at the last meeting. I went through the CART transcript and took out all of the suggestions and then grouped them. So I think there's two goals tonight. One is to remove things that we don't all agree on, because I know that there are some of those in here based on discussion at the last meeting. And the other is to get this to a point where it's general enough that we feel comfortable submitting it to City Council. So maybe what we want to end up with is two things. One, our internal list for these are all of the ideas we've got so far. And the other is, here's broad categories with a couple ideas so that City Council knows what we're thinking of. But I think we will be removing some of these things this evening because there is not agreement on all of them. Leanne?
Excuse me, could you just reread the list once so I can be thinking about it, please?
Sure. The general categories are access, grant making, internal usage. So things like food at our meetings, printing, looking at the community, programming and events, publicity for the commission, and training. Leanne?
Yeah, so sort of going off of what Holly was saying, I think if there is anything that falls into that, really this is the city's responsibility, but if we decide that we want to have the option for it anyway, I think we should make sure that we do that in it falls under the broad things, but we don't list it as one of the specific examples. I don't know if we want to even have that option to do the things that should be the city's responsibility, or if we want to be very clear that we're not going to. But if we are keeping that open, it should be only in the vagueness and not the specific examples.
This is Bonnie. Thank you. Yeah, I think that we can take this as our first point of discussion. There are several of us that firmly believe that anything that is something the city should be handling should not be something that we spend money on. And perhaps the first thing we can do is go through and take any of those things out. And, thankfully we have the ADA coordinator here who's going to know things we've thought need doing, but we think the city should be funding. But we can also keep that list and share it with the city of, hey, we've identified these things and you're falling short. See, Holly and then Leanne, I don't know if you had not put your hand down or if you had it raised again.
Nope, I just forgot.
And then Adrian after Holly.
Thank you.
Could you put my hand in the line too? Thanks.
Yeah, is that, sorry, Harriet, thank you.
To that end, I was wondering if I could give some comments on the access section.
This is Bonnie. Yes, Holly, we will do that as soon as, let me take comments from Adrian and Harriet, and then, yep, let's start in the access section.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. Just a note, since we're talking about cutting this down and sort of, I'm the resource about what potentially the city should be covering instead of the commission having to use these funds to cover it. I've been told by my director that once you all do get to a place of hybrid or back to in-person meetings, if you do need any supplies for those meetings, that would be something that the RSJ budget would cover. So I am inviting you to remove that from this external list for city council.
Thank you. Harriet?
I think we're starting to probably get into this. This is Harriet. To get closer definitions of what these categories are as a way of figuring out what lies with the city and what lies with us. Now, I'm going to assume the word access would include the processing and review of variance. So that's it.
This is Bonnie. So the review of variances is just a function. So this list is specifically for what to spend accessible parking funds on.
Oh, yes. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Great. So I just want to note for people who can't see, I am starting a list of city so that we can keep track of it. And I'm just going to add the things we pull. And the first one is food at our meetings for events if we go back in person. So I see Brian and Leanne, if they're relevant to the discussion of how we're doing this, but if we're getting into comments about the actual content, I want to make sure we start with Holly.
This is Leanne. Mine is about the overall.
Okay, great. And Brian?
Also about the overall.
Great. Please.
Leanne, go ahead.
Okay, just looking over this, I'm seeing it's not split out in the sort of way I was thinking of it, and how it's split out would be like physical objects versus like events and paying people, and that I don't know if that is how other people were thinking about organizing it, but I think that could be a way to sort of break things into sections. Is like, this is a object that is being acquired for, a library or a school or whatever, or a playground, versus this is, funding a class or something. So that could be a way to sort of break things down. And I think that, at least to me, seems more clear than saying, this is access versus grant making, because the access could mean an object, or it could mean hiring a person to do something.
This is Bonnie. Thank you, Leanne. I totally hear that. And I think to Harriet's point, maybe we should work on giving some more definition to the categories. I think there were multiple calls for organizing in sort of categories like this to catch the intent of what the thing was doing. And the point of this in terms of city council is to make sure that we are covering enough ground that we don't need every spending decision brought back. And so I would worry if we just do, here's a physical bucket and here's a pay people bucket. We're not going to be covering enough ground for them to just approve, yes, you can spend on whatever. Whereas if we give more categories, that gives them more info on like the range of things that we might be doing. But I don't.
Yeah, I think part of it is that having a category that's access feels weird to me, because the entire point of all of it is access. And so that category is just kind of like, what does that even mean? And I think most of the things in that category happen to be sort of the objects. So
this is Bonnie. I think we could work on changing the language for how what we're calling that category, and that might be a good way to address that.
I think either what we're calling it, or if we're adding sort of a description of each of them, then that would help with that. I just like, I'm not sure what's supposed to go in that category, because like I can't tell what it's actually encompassing.
Okay. Brian?
Yeah, this is Brian. First, I'm actually going to respond to Leanne. In my notes from last month, Colin had called that section stuff or items instead of access. So it was intended to be, my understanding, it was intended to be objects, tools, things that would allow the general public better access, especially if they're disabled. As far as I did want to address the comment about wanting to avoid things that the city should provide, I think we need to make a distinction between what the city should provide and what the city's required to provide, because we 100% agree the commission should not spend one dime on something that the city is legally obligated to provide. But the term should is really flexible, and one could argue that everything on this list the city should provide, or you could argue that the city shouldn't provide any of it because the Disability Commission has a fund to pay for it. So I think in that should category is where we really need to exercise our values.
This is Bonnie. Thank you. Yes, Brian, that is an excellent point about the precision of language or the lack thereof. I definitely, and I think the others, based on discussion last month, are saying that we don't feel the commission should be spending on things the city is legally required to provide. And some of that is a little, might be tricky to distinguish, but some of it is pretty clear. And yes, it's not meant to be a moral, the city should do this. It's a legal, the city is required to do this. But I will endeavor to be more precise in that language. Thank you. Okay. I think we're definitely going to need to workshop how to describe these categories and how to organize the document, but I will note that we've got about 35 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we can do some work on actually paring down the document and taking things out that we know we don't want to include. So I'm going to go back to Holly.
Thanks, Chair Dennis.
And actually, sorry, one thing before, do people need me to, in each category, read what each of the things currently on there are before we start going through it? Okay, Holly, take it away.
Forgive me. Do we have to have specific categories, or can we simplify this with an opening statement that says these funds will be used to promote, and these are some of the categories in which they will be used, and below are examples, but not an inclusive list, and therefore have some things that are stated there. Example, the screen just moved. Hold on a second. Instead of saying access, we would say improving, word access throws me. So if we were to say grant making, scholarships for disabled high school students sounds fantastic. After school programming should be something that exists, but maybe bringing awareness about if there is actually a lack of that. So I think if we were to talk about education, outreach, in making additional improvements, recommendations, measuring things, if we were to sort of make a sentence rather than have to categorize things, because we're all going to think they fall under different topics, but if we were to say in more detail what they are, more specifics, then it just sort of to simplify things. Am I Am I speaking clearly? I'm not sure if I am. That,
This is Bonnie. I think you are. I think the trick is doing that. And I will say that I'm trying to believe the city wants us to be able to access these funds. I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt there. However, these funds were approved nearly a year ago. The fund has existed. There has been very little movement in terms of us actually being able to access them. So we can be as broad or as detailed as we want. And I think city council is probably going to say, this is great. And I also think the city administration, who physically control the purse strings and have to write the checks because we will never have a checkbook, will want some amount of detail, or will want to force us in front of city council every time we want to write a check. So I think it behooves us to do as much as possible to make it easy for them to say yes, to avoid having to repeatedly go in front of city council. That is perhaps me being cynical, but the reality is city council has supported us using these funds. They approved them nearly a year ago, and the city administration has not followed through on making it easy to figure out how to do so. And the point we're at in the process is I've been told by the city budget director that we need to create this document and it should cover the range of things we want to do. And theoretically, we can present this document to city council each year and get it approved. And then the city accountant will write a check as long as what we're asking for matches something on this document. But
how would you like us to move forward? Because I know time is important, and
I think to move forward, I would like to do two things. One, let's try and remove things that we know that we don't agree on, because I think there's going to be some easy ones. And what I would love to do is to form a subcommittee for people to try and get a draft of this document, because, or maybe a couple of drafts organized different ways, because I think we could spend months going back and forth about the best way to do it, but without having, like, it's clear that what I put together quickly is not working for everyone. And that's fine. I didn't expect it to. I was just putting down the information that I had and trying to do a basic first pass. And I'm seeing that it's not a good document for people. So it needs workshopping. And I would love to be able to identify people who can do that. I see Jamie and Colin. Jamie, you're muted.
Yep, I tried to click the unmute button and it didn't go. This is Jamie. I think what we're struggling here with process because we don't have a way to discuss every item on a big list because everything is interrelated, and we could talk about any of these bullet points for an hour. But what I think might be a good way to do that first pass that you wanted to do is just run through each bullet, not have a lot of discussion about the details of that bullet, but just say, does someone want to speak up and say, this should not be on the list. This is not something that belongs in this document.
This is Bonnie. I agree wholeheartedly. Let's take Colin's comment, and I see a thumbs up from Brian. And so Colin, and then Leon has a comment, and then I would love to actually be able to do that.
They covered it. I was going to suggest something very similar.
the answer for all of forever. So if there's something that we're not sure about, it might be easiest to say there's enough things that are definite for this year. We'll put the things that are definite, and if there's things that maybe we want to do or maybe we don't want to do, we can hold off on it for this year. And after we've gone through the process of actually using some of the funds, next time we do one of these, we can evaluate, should we add it in next time?
This is Bonnie. I love that framing. Great. So, Colin, do you want to lower your hand? So I am going to start, and I will give 20-30 seconds for people to unmute if you want to say, no, let's not have this. Or if there's something you're like, yes, we absolutely have to, you can do that as well. But otherwise, like, let's try to move through quickly. And I am not going to remove things right now. I'm just going to put a Y or an N next to them so that it can go a little faster. Okay, under physical items, I have accessible playground equipment.
Yes. You see my thumb?
I do, Harriet.
Okay.
I see a couple of thumbs up. Great. Accessible workout equipment inclusive of wheelchair users. See a couple thumbs up. Great. Magnifiers for the libraries. Okay. Accessible sports equipment / modifications for sports fields. So that would be things like accessible bikes. I am failing to find examples right now. I don't hear a no. Equipment to check ADA / MAAB compliance of the built environment. So not to do the work, but to check that things are compliant.
So,
And I see a raised hand from Holly, and then I've got a comment on that. Holly? Oh, just a thumbs up. Okay.
Yes, I.
Okay. Brian?
On hand.
As far as I'm assuming you're meaning like a smart level or tape measure. I would think that's something that we could put under like office equipment for the commission, and maybe we could figure out a way for either RSJ or maybe even engineering to buy an extra set that you could check out. I wouldn't oppose the commission to buying their own, but we might be able to figure out a way to acquire them for your use too.
This is Bonnie. I think that's great. And I'm going to preface this comment with, we don't have time to get into a discussion about it, but I think it's going to come up again. In my driving through Somerville twice in the past week, I have seen multiple parklets that look to be the same exact parklets that were built last year, and thus would in no way comply with the requirements that were put forth in the current outdoor dining regulations. So I think tools like this could be really useful for the commission to do some checking, because I think that's going to come up a lot. Disability related books for city and school libraries and community centers, both books about disability and books that happen to have disabled characters. Oh, whoops. Okay.
are we getting a yes? Are we getting
Yep.
a yes?
Yep, we're getting a yes. So now,
I have a quick comment.
yes, Henry.
I suggest that we ask these groups to submit a list that they want and don't just like give them books and think that they're going to necessarily put them on the shelves. Libraries get a lot of well-intended donations that could be better targeted. Thank you.
This is Bonnie. Thank you, Henry. I think that's an excellent thing to do when we get into like, how do we spend the funds? But really good point. Don't just buy books, but have conversations about what do you want? What do you need? How can we help with that? Okay, grant making, scholarships for disabled high school students.
This is Leon. This is one where I think that it would be great. And also I'm worried about implementation and how do we actually carry it out, and how do we carry it out previously. So this might be one that would be a more of a goal for the future one in my mind.
This is Bonnie. I will point out that there's nothing tying us to having to spend the money on the list, but having it on there makes it easier to. So I think it's useful to put things off that people don't think we should actually do. But how do other people feel about, should we remove things that we don't think we currently have the capacity but think are good ideas?
No. No.
This is Colin. I would vote for keeping them on the list, and then we can decide later whether we feel like we have the capacity or not.
This is Bonnie. I would agree with that, just because I think that the capacity and how to implement is going to be a question for literally everything. Everything, as we discussed previously, will require some follow-up, some work of some or all of the commission members. And I agree that this one is probably not one we're going to implement this year, but I don't think we should remove it. If
I think my concern is mostly with for anything where we're like directly giving money to a specific individual, I feel like there's going to be a lot more scrutiny. But I definitely get we should keep it on because we want to have the option. So yes.
Arts and culture accessibility, assisting with funds for sign language interpreters, CART, Braille for community performances to be more accessible, i.e. like Davis Square Theater.
Yes.
Yeah, I think as long as there's some stipulation about like what counts as a community performance versus a professional performance, that should be doing it themselves. But yes.
Other folks, Henry?
I'd be in favor of us providing standardized signage, such as Braille signage for the bathroom and the concession, but not things that are made specifically bespoke for one business.
Okay.
So in other words, an exit sign, yes. Welcome to the Davis Square Theater, no.
This is Bonnie. I think this was, I don't remember who raised it, but I think it was more like assisting theater performances to have ASL interpreters and things to make the performance itself accessible. Which this ties into several other things on the list, which are funding for private businesses. So we could take that up as a group, because I think there was not agreement on that. And
if it's a nonprofit, I think it's fine. Otherwise, I would not support that.
Yeah, this is Leon. I agree that
Ian, I'm going to stop you, and just for order, I want to please raise hands and let's try to go in order, because I saw Jamie with a hand up as well, and then I can come back to you.
Does that mean it's my turn?
Yep.
This is Jamie. I think we should remember the context that this is the grant making category. The idea is not that we will go seek out organizations, but we will make a resource available that someone can apply. And again, we can get into capacity issues, not tonight, but yeah, it doesn't mean that we're committing ourselves to giving money to for-profit businesses or anything like that.
Thank you, Leon.
Yeah, I think that I support keeping this on, as long as it is clear that this is not for businesses, it is for community performances that don't have the resources to be providing this on their own. So like if the high school is putting on a show and wanted to have interpretation, like absolutely. If like some big theater is doing a show, like they should be able to do that themselves. And like unless maybe there would be some niche category, but like I think just having it as a like not for profit specifically, then absolutely I think we should have that on.
This is Bonnie. I agree with that as well. So I'm going to add nonprofit slash high school slash like honk or Somerville Open Studios, which is a nonprofit, but I think a lot of people are under the misconception that the city puts that event on. So I think we're all in agreement that nonprofit and community-based organizations are who we would want to support. Okay, the next one I think will be easy. Business modifications for private businesses. I'm going to go with a no, and I see at least one other thumbs down. And Henry, I'm pretty sure you would also thumbs down that. So after school programming for kids with disabilities. I'm going to put this
Wait,
one.
I'm sorry, I have one thing to say. This is Katie about that.
Yep.
Only because I remember Henry's point from last time. So I'm on the board of East Somerville Main Street, and the organization, the businesses that we provide services to are mostly low income, the owners are mostly low income people of color. For example, we might be supporting, we wouldn't be supporting Santander, but we might be supporting a small restaurant who is not. And so those are the, when I brought that up, those are the things that I was thinking about, helping those things to make it more accessible, because it might not be, but I understand the point. I just wanted to explain that.
Thank you, Katie. Henry?
That sounds like a very good point. Katie, is your group a nonprofit?
Yes, I'm on the board of East Somerville Main Street.
Oh,
And so so the businesses that we support are the small salons, the owner, the small salons. They don't own the building. They don't own the small salons, the small can be the small businesses, like the small low income owner businesses, not like not Union Square Donut. I don't know if they're small, but like not Diesel Cafe, or not like a more established thing that has funding and other kind of things, but more of like the they're small businesses too, but I understand the point. They're a little bit just different.
Union Square Donuts helps to make me big. So let me take what you're saying to heart, and I'm fine with us saying business modifications nonprofit, just like we did.
Low income. I mean, they could be low. Because I'm not. The businesses. My organization supports the businesses, but I'm saying low. They're like low income, minority owned business. I don't know how you want to say it, but those are the things I was thinking of. Things that like they really couldn't do it, but they want to make their space accessible. That's all.
I understand. I'm fine if we say nonprofit. I'm hesitant to go further than that. Thank you.
This is Bonnie. I'm going to make a quick note, and maybe this is what Brian was going to say. The city actually has funds for some of that because of all of the discussion the past couple of years, and I think maybe they haven't done a really good job of advertising that, but yeah, so I don't,
maybe advertising, then maybe helping people find that stuff, or but anyways, that's fine. I just wanted to explain. I'm done.
Okay. I don't know who raised a hand first, Brian or Leon, because my screen did a thing. So duke it out.
I'll go first. This is Brian, just because it's a direct follow on. One is, I wasn't going to say that, but that's a really good point, Bonnie, that the city does have funds. But I know the people at East Somerville Main Streets and Union Square Main Streets, and they do exactly as Katie was purporting, and they're very aware of the funds that economic development has and really works to distribute them. Maybe a way to get through this is to say that business modifications via a community nonprofit such as East Somerville Main Streets or Union Square Main Streets. And I think we can use them as kind of the the foil or the
Gateway,
way
the
to judge
gateway.
way
The
to
gateway.
judge whether it's appropriate.
And again, I find that this is one of those things that you put off for years and stuff. It was just an idea, and things I see our businesses, our small, low-income local businesses struggling with. That's all.
Okay. Leanne and Colin.
Mine was actually about the after-school programming. So if there's more discussion about the business modifications, that should go first.
Colin.
Yeah, it's been said essentially by Brian. I think that pass-through idea basically makes sense. In such a circumstance, we could give a block of money to something like this Main Streets program to say, to be used for, grants, to organizations meeting these criteria, and then let them deal with it. Like that wouldn't be a case of us making grants to businesses ourselves. We would just need to talk with them about their criteria and make sure they align with ours. So yeah.
Great, Leanne.
Are we moving on to after-school programming?
Sure. Actually, I will make one comment, and I think that pass-through is great because in terms of administration, I think the commission could do a little bit more work to lay out these are the types of things we want it spent on, like, braille signs or ramps to take care of a single step and large print menus. Like we can give them a list and then we can hand it off, and that would be a really easy way for us to actually use some of the money quickly in a way that would help large swaths of the community and not require a lot of administration on our end. Like I could actually see us accomplishing that in the next couple of months. So I love it. And for those who can't see, I added the line business modifications via a community nonprofit such as East Somerville Main Streets / Union Square Main Streets. Moving on.
Okay. Is it me?
Yep.
Okay, so for the after-school programming, I think there's sort of two halves to that. There's one would be programs specifically targeted at kids with disabilities, and one would be resources to make general after-school programming more accessible. And I think that both of those would be important. I think the resources for general after-school might be like a higher priority, but I think both of them would be great to have on the list.
Excuse
This is Katie. Just about the after-school programs. I know that I've been working with this Padres Latinos group, and we're working really hard to get more families to enroll their kids in after-school programs. Many of these parents are also have children with some forms of disability, and so trying to get more people. One of the issues is funding, actually. So that's not to hire more people so more children can attend. And so I don't know if you same kind of thing you were just saying, Bonnie, about like you can apply for grants to possibly, I don't know, something like that. But that is one of the issues that we're having with the group. So we want a lot of people to join, but we don't have enough slots. And a lot of those kids are children who are identified as being with disabilities or having a disability.
Thank you. I see Harriet.
Yeah, I didn't hear the second category you said, Leanne, but before you answered that, I can really see us researching and identifying kinds of things that would make after school more accessible in terms of physical things, whether it's braille print books or whether it's large print books or whether it's certain kinds of educational toys. I don't know. I could see, but again, is it that we're asking an after school group to write a grant requesting that, or exactly? I don't know. Anyway, I could see that we could make a contribution where the funds are so tight for after school programs. And I don't know enough about how they're funded in the first place to answer that. So, and Leanne, what were you saying were the two distinguishing separation things about after school programs?
So one would be things like, your sort of generic after school programs. That's the like the kids need someone to stay after school because their parents are still working and the school is putting on, whatever after school programming. And what resources do they need to make sure that that is actually accessible, fulfilling to kids with disabilities. And then the other would be something like, I don't know, like partnering with Waypoint or something to run programs specifically designed around this is a program for kids with disabilities and specifically designed around their needs, rather than just the open enrollment, just sort of who is here after school kind of thing.
Liam,
So-
I love that idea because, like I said, we're also trying to like encourage families to show that after school program isn't just when your kids are working. It's like something to do. It's an enrichment thing. It's an enrichment It's not just like a babysitter, or like sometimes people leave their kids to their family's home with the person, but like there's actually things to do and your kids can learn to learn. So I love that second idea. I'll stop talking, Bonnie. I get really excited about certain things. So
Yep, I hear you. And also we are rapidly running out of time. I see Jamie.
This is Jamie. I'm good. Yeah, let's keep going.
Okay. So given that we are 8 minutes before the end of the meeting, I am going to stop my screen share and get into the discussion of who has capacity to try and reformat this, which I know we have only gone through 2 of the categories. So there will still need to be some pulling off of things, but I think there's enough done to have a general idea of like, I think we all agree, or most of us agree, that we don't want to support private businesses that can afford to do things themselves. And we want to pull out the things the city is legally required to do / has offered to use departmental funds for. And then we should just work on formatting. So who wants to be on a subcommittee? I see a raised hand from Harriet, who is not yet a full
that's right.
commissioner. And so I think, your voice would be useful, and we also need a commissioner. I know that Holly expressed some interest, but also had to go because of an urgent issue. Leanne?
This is Leanne. I'm potentially interested, but not sure how much time I can actually commit. I think I could definitely help with the formatting part. I don't know if I can help with the writing out descriptions and proper document language. So I definitely don't want to say, yes, I can totally do it, but I could try to be on a subcommittee and hopefully contribute somewhat.
I'm happy to vote that we form a subcommittee with Leanne and Harriet and see what happens, because it's either that or we do absolutely nothing on this until next month. And I think we're going to not have much time to work on it next month, because we will hopefully be welcoming 4 new commissioners and talking about officer positions, which will need to be discussed so that people can be thinking about it to hopefully have elections in July. I saw a raised hand from Henry and then Jamie.
I think Holly had a really good idea. Can we invite her to participate in the subcommittee if she's so inclined and available?
This is Bonnie. Is anybody versed enough in the rules to know whether we can vote on a subcommittee member who's not in attendance still? I suppose she doesn't have to show up if we're.
This is Brian. I doubt there are any rules that are so specific to that case. So I would suggest that we include Holly in the committee, and if she declines, then she's just absent. I don't think it makes a difference.
Okay. Jamie?
I'm in a similar place to Leanne as far as capacity, but I would be willing to be on that committee in my non-voting member capacity.
Okay, so does somebody who's a voting member want to make a motion to form this subcommittee? I see
This
Brian.
is Katie, and I make a motion to create a subcommittee to organize the list of potential uses for parking fund violations. And I nominate Bonnie, Liam. No, I don't nominate. I nominate Jamie, Harriet. Nope, I don't.
Sorry,
Liam and Holly. I see heads going like this and like that, so I'm not sure what part is right or wrong.
not
so,
it.
Okay.
But yeah,
I don't
I-
nominate Bonnie.
I have the 4 correct, Bonnie.
Thank you. I
Don't
will.
worry.
great. I second that motion. So all in favor? I see a raised hand from Lynn.
Like, do I vote on myself?
Yes.
Sure.
you
Okay.
Yes, you do.
All right, the motion passes unanimously. I see a raised hand from Harriet.
I just am, this is just a suggestion in terms of my own time. I would really like to meet before the end of the month, if that's possible for people within the next 10 days or so. Beginning of June is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So.
Sure.
Does email work for all those
Yes.
4 people? Okay, then we should make sure we have each other's emails so we can
This is
coordinate.
Oh, and I'm
Bonnie,
out of town for the Memorial Day weekend, so I really want to get this going.
Sure.
Okay.
This is Bonnie. I think Adrian, can I nominate you to connect them because you should also have all their emails and that way I'm not joining in a subcommittee and messing up quorum.
Yeah, and I would be happy to also provide support in terms of a Zoom link and just being there just as your staff liaison to help. And congratulations on forming your first subcommittee. That's exciting.
Yay.
This
We
is
did
Bonnie.
it.
Technically, it's our second or third, but we
Okay.
were told we couldn't do the. We won't get into that, but hopefully this will be
So
our
first as
functional-
as me acting as your staff liaison. So I'll
Yeah.
take this. But yay.
And I will note right before we go, because we're hitting that time, that yeah, the next 10 days is great because in 14 days I'm having surgery, hence me not volunteering myself and Lean being unclear about capacity. So I recommend y'all do this work fast, and I will do my part to push Lean to follow through on it. But yeah. Thank you, everyone. This was, weighty as always, but I think we managed to get a lot done. And I look forward to coming back next month and hopefully having a bunch of new commissioners that everybody is welcoming. Brian?
Do I have space for a 1-minute PSA?
Yep, you have 30 seconds to a minute. Yep, go.
Okay. And Bonnie, you reminded me of this when you mentioned the outdoor seating. Yes, a lot of them are going in. Please, 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 if anyone sees anything that they're questioning, don't like, just email me 311 it, just get it to me somehow. We have somebody who's going around and checking them, but we only have the capacity to do it on demand, not on, just saying.
This is Bonnie. I'll note that that's not how it was supposed to run this year. So that's real frustrating.
No, we do have them
But-
going out. We do have them going out when they set up. But if you're seeing something that they're missing or anything else, I would rather somebody go out and look at it than it sit there and festering a wound again.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have the capacity to go
No.
and do a full dive, but I will
This
say
is
that
for
every
everybody.
single one
I
I've
want
seen-
everybody knows my email. You can contact me directly. I don't want this. I want these to be problems to be solved and not languishing. And I'm sure Adrian is in the same boat. I just 311 it, email me, call me. It's all good.
Thank
We'll
you.
get it sorted out.
Well, you can go and check out Machu Picchu, the one on the left side, not on the corner.
Okay.
And there's another business there that's like in the middle of the sidewalk. And also La Posadas has the same exact parklet as they put out last year.
The
And
grass. Okay.
and the grass is a problem, and I doubt that there's a transition strip.
Okay.
And
No,
I
I
didn't
don't.
see
Okay.
furniture on it, but I know the structure itself is not.
I can
So
do
those are
that.
a couple.
Thank you.
Awesome.
We'll do
Okay.
it now.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And,
everybody. Thank you.
I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. That's the word. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.